Welcome to this course on how to get a book deal, a cash advance for your book, and how to get your book sold in bookstores. My name is Alex Kanadinik, and I'll be your instructor. Now, to create this course for you, I interviewed one of the most sought after literary agents in the world, Mark Gottlieb. So the information you get is expert level. When I interviewed him, our interview ran long, and so I refilmed the videos so he doesn't actually appear in the lectures, but the information comes largely from him. So what we're going to show you in this course is, first, the terminology is very confusing. What's a literary agent? What's a publishing house? How do you get a book deal? How do you pitch and find agents? All of this, if you're just starting out, if you have a dream of creating your book and having it sold in bookstores and having a really successful books, you need all these things, but it's a confusing world. That universe is confusing. So the course is going to help you understand all the moving parts, whether you need a publisher, an agent, or whether you should self-publish. And if you decide to go after an agent and you want to get your book published, you need an agent. How do you pick the right agents? How do you pitch them so they want to work with you because they have a lot of opportunity? How do you make the best agents that are a fit for the kind of book you have to work with you, who have relationships with all the publishers, who can get you published, get you that cash advance to help you write your book, and eventually get your book sold in bookstores, which is a dream for many authors. So that's what we're going to focus on in this course. Welcome. Let's begin.
Now, let me explain what exactly is a literary agent. An agent, sometimes it's called a literary agent, sometimes it's just short for agent, it's the same thing. An agent represents authors to book publishers. A publisher, these are those big publishing houses that will publish your books and distribute your book into stores. And so the agent is that buffer. And publishing houses, they don't work directly with authors, so the author needs to be represented by the literary agent. So if you want your book published into stores and things like that, almost always you first have to have an agent, a literary agent, who will vouch for you as the author. And what the literary agent will do is they get a lot of pitches from different authors, obviously. They review manuscripts. The ones that they like, it's kind of like they're the first screen of the writer. So their job is to not really take on the most of the beginner writers or writers who are not as good as they think. And we weed those out and choose only the best ones. And once they have the best ones, then they open the door to publishers, because they have direct relationships to publishers and publishers trust them. Like if an agent vouches for a book and for an author, the publisher will take a close look at that book. So the agent is your key to getting into publishing houses and to get considered by them. So the first step in getting your book published is to establish a relationship with an agent and to have the agent take you on board as a client. Now that we understand what a literary agent does and how they can help, well, how much do they charge for their services, right? So it's actually $0 upfront and you don't have to pay them hourly. That's the good news. The bad news is they take 15% lifetime from all author deals earnings. So any money that the author that they work with earn for a particular book, not all their author's books, but for a particular book they decide to work on, if the agent gets you a deal and under that deal, whatever is covered under that deal, if that book under that deal makes money like 10 years from now, still this agent will keep getting paid 15%. So it's kind of like going to the doctor and the doctor asks you, so do you want the good news or the bad news? Which one do you want first? So the good news, you don't have to pay up front. They really help you. They do a lot of the work for you up front. The bad news is 15% lifetime earnings. But before you start kicking and screaming, oh my God, 15% of lifetime earnings, hold on. They give you opportunity that you would not otherwise have. They connect you to the publishing houses, and the publishing houses can put you in a ton of brick and mortar stores and give you a lot of further opportunities to sell your books that you would not otherwise get that revenue. Think of it as 15% of revenue you would never get. So like maybe Barnes & Noble, it's impossible to get in there without an agent. So it's actually a blessing in disguise. Like this is amazing. So that fee, I wouldn't worry about it too much. And it's relatively standard across the industry in the United States. That 15% is standard. And if you're in a different country, likely there's something similar, some similar number for this, because this is a pretty standard situation. Now, if you were worried, well, oh my God, I'm giving up so much. Well, Amazon charges at least 30% for every sale, approximately, sometimes more. So don't worry about that, because guess what? Down the road, more people will take a cut from your sales anyway. Like your publisher will take a cut. The stores where you sell will also take a cut. So we'll talk about all that, and we'll actually talk about what you're left with eventually. But this is money and revenue that you wouldn't get otherwise. So think of it that way, and understand that the most important takeaway as far as the literary agent is concerned, they take $0 up front. You pay them nothing. They do a lot of the work for you, and it's 15% lifetime to that agent. Now let's go over the standard way to pitch literary agents, which is through a document called the query letter, and there's a certain format. We'll go over the hook and the format. So first we're going to go over the hook. Basically, this is like your bite-sized pitch, like you're almost like your elevator pitch, your one-sentence pitch. It's not even your 1 minute pitch. It's way shorter. And there's a few examples of few kinds of different books. And we're going to go through, just one, and the rest you can just browse on your own. It's right here for you. The yellow is not highlighted by me. That's actually highlighted in the document that Mark Gottlieb provided. But let's read it and take a look what it is. It reads as New York Times bestselling author. Okay, boom, right? That means it's coming from an experienced author and of the forthcoming The Vanishing Year and Blackbird season. So this is an experienced author with previous written books, Kate Moretti. And here's the book pitched as, so actually this is that pitch. The yellow is the pitch. Of course, that authority building in the beginning, of course, that's great, but the yellow is the pitch. So the pitch reads like this. Dark Places meets Girl with a Dragon Tattoo. Dark Places and Girl with a Dragon Tattoo are existing works, so a literary agent already would know approximately what the flavor would be of this book if you mix and match these two existing ones. And if that looks familiar, this is a very common format for pitching startups. Oh, I'm creating an app that's an Uber for pets, or a food delivery for dogs, or something like, I don't know. But basically, a lot of startups pitch themselves by giving a sense of other ones. Well, I'm the Airbnb for something, right? So that way you can tell what the book is about or what the pitch is about. So that's a really easy way for the literary agent to tell what the book is going to be about. And then you give them a little bit of a glimpse of what happens in the book. And that's essentially it. And you'll see the second one is almost identically written. First, they establish their credibility. And then they talk about, pitched as a handy linen for the rookie generation. And all of these are similar. So basically, for your book, you'll need to find what are the current books, the mix of which sort of represents your book. And that's your hook. That's how you're going to always be able to pitch your book, even beyond literary agents. Now let's go over how the query letters actually look like. First, you want to start off with something that's called advanced praise. That's where an existing author or some authoritative figure takes a look at your book and gives you this kind of a quote or a blurb from them about your book, and that immediately gives your book credibility. Obviously, for a lot of new authors, it's very hard to get this, so you don't have to go to the top of the food chain, but if you can at least get someone noteworthy to say something nice about your book, that's already a big win. Now let's go down into the pitch. This is essentially the pitch. So you don't want to make it too long, because keep in mind that the agent will have to read it, and if they have to read too much, they don't have time. So for their sake, keep it relatively short. Notice your bio, the author bio is in the bottom right here. So that's standard. You just use your bio. And then the rest of these are just 4 paragraphs, and you don't want to say any more. You really just say a little bit about the book and introducing it, and then actually explain what's in the book. These are just explanations of what's in the book. And here's another one for Brady. So you can take a look. I'll have this in the downloadables area of this video, so you can take a look at it. So it's a brief page. It's essentially a one-pager. What's important is to be interesting and clear, because if your pitch is muddled and it's not clear, then the agent does not have a lot of time to decode all the confusing parts of the pitch. And if your book is good, but your pitch is confusing, that's the worst, because your book is actually worth getting their attention, but the pitch confused them. So you really want to be very clear, very on point, not too verbose, because sometimes talking too much is actually bad. You want to go less is more. You see how in the pitches, literally you can pitch in one sentence. You can explain what the book is really about in one sentence. And you should do that, because you know what they say, if you can't explain it clearly yourself and briefly, then probably you don't understand it yourself. You want to really explain the book, be clear. That clarity is the number one requirement. Without clarity, there's nothing else. Once you're clear, you want to be interesting and compelling about the book. That's the job of the pitch. And then if the agent likes it, they'll get back to you. If they don't like it, there's not much you can do, because you've already have a industry standard, well-crafted pitch. So it may be something with the book or something else. But this is essentially what you send to the literary agent for them to consider your book. Now let's talk about even more and fuller benefits of your agent and the publisher. So we already covered a little bit about the literary agent, so I'll briefly go through that and then we'll get into the publisher. So the agent, he also, in addition to taking on your book and doing some work on your behalf, he'll do a little bit of coaching and guidance for you to how to maybe edit the book a little better, improve a little better, so that it appeals to publishers. And of course, they'll do that without the upfront or hourly cost. So they'll help you become a little better as a writer for the rest of your career, a little bit. It's not entirely their job, but they'll do a little bit of that job for you. They'll help you a little bit with that. And of course, the main job they have is to introduce you to book publishers, and you get access to their relationships. Usually, like for example, in New York, most of the publishing houses have big offices here, and the biggest literary agents also have offices here, and they're literally sometimes just go and meet for lunch. They're like not next door, but sometimes it might as well be next door, because they're all in Manhattan. All the either headquarters or big offices are in Manhattan. It's a small industry. They all know one another, and they're friendly. As authors, we're like on the outside looking in. They, on the other hand, they're next door. They hang out with each other. They go to the same networking parties. It's a small industry. They know which publisher might be interested in which book, and which editor at a publisher might decide to take on a book. So that's really the job of the agent. And they work on your behalf, because the better the deal that they get you, remember, they take 15% of that. So it's in their incentive to get you more money, better deal, because that's more revenue for the agent. So the agent is on your team in a sense. The agent is also on the publisher team, because they have long-term relationships with the publishers, but it's also in their interest to get you a good deal. Now, what is the benefit of a book publisher? Once you get a deal with a publisher, they can get you in not only United States bookstores, but worldwide. They can help you to translate your book to other languages, place it in like United States, Europe, other countries. They can get you, excerpts on your book published in magazines, get you publicity, and put you in tens of different online stores. So they help you with offline brick and mortar stores and online stores. So they're just going to give you a very, very, very wide reach. And they have publicists on staff, so your book can also get a little bit of publicity. You've probably seen TV shows where they have segments where like, oh, such and such author just wrote a book and here they are. Well, they're not there by magic. It's because the publicist at the publishing house probably worked with that show to get the spot for the author, and they're there to make money from that book. They're there to promote the book. So it's an industry that's kind of like, there's a lot of like insider baseball happening where it's all connected, and the shows have relationships with the publicists at the publishing companies, and so you get access to those relationships. And if they see a potential placement opportunity for your book, you'll get there that you otherwise wouldn't be able to do on your own probably. They also have editors on staff so that they can make your book much better. And there's different kinds of editing, like line editing, very close editing, general editing to make sure that the book fits a market. So it's actually beyond what a single editor might do for you if you were to hire them on your own. And the nice thing that most authors like is that publishers usually give a book advance to the author. So a book advance is basically like a lump sum upfront payment that the author does not have to pay back, and it's basically something the author can use for anything they want, to improve the book, to rewrite the book, to maybe write the book because maybe they don't have the complete book written, maybe to write their next book. They do not have to pay this back. The way that the advance works is that the initial revenue from the book is deducted from the advance. So let's say they give you a $20,000 advance, you keep that money, but you don't take revenue from the book until the book has recouped that $20,000 to the publisher. So it's an upfront sum, but it's not exactly a gift. And some authors receive like as low as $20,000. Some authors receive as much as $1 million. What's the difference? Well, if you're a celebrity, then you probably get closer to $1 million advance. If you're a first-time author, not really known, they're taking a risk on you, you're probably going to be at the very low end of that. So if you're starting out, you're probably going to be at the low end of that. And the publisher can even get you something way cooler, like even potential movie deals. If you write fiction and you have an interesting story, it's not unusual that you can have a movie deal based on your book. Of course, movie deals are rare in themselves, but that's how you get one. Is if you are usually you get one is if you're published through a traditional publishing house. They have relationships with movie studios and such. So you get to leverage all these strong industry relationships that as an independent author you could in theory have, but it would be incredibly difficult. And so the way to get the movie deal, to get into stores, to get on TV promoting your book, all that is if you're signed on to a publishing house. Now that you understand that it's helpful to have a literary agent if you want to get your book published, there are a few ways to find agents. I'm going to go over a few of them. The most common sense basic one is just go to Google and look at options for, literary agent for, in my case, it will be business books. In your case, it might be some other book, and see what comes up. You have some lists of literary agents. You have some kind of a site that looks like this, literaryagencies.com. So you can look through these. This is a reasonably good free resource. These are fine. There is an industry standard website. That website is publishersmarketplace.com. This is it. Now, I know this looks like a dinosaur of a website that used to exist even before the dinosaurs. At least that's what it looks like to me. It's like worst version of Craigslist, but it is the place that Mark Gottlieb suggested is the industry standard and the most authoritative and comprehensive place to find agents for specific books, and you can also list them as the most popular. Now, there is a fee. It's a $25 fee, so you should only register for this if you're really serious about finding agents. Otherwise, you can use Google and other free resources that you can find there. But because there's a fee, I don't actually have an account, so Mark sent me a screenshot of what you can see inside. This is that screenshot, and you basically can see that you can search for agencies in different categories, and it will give you different agencies that come up listed. And you can basically see on the right side how many deals they have, so you can see how popular and active they are. So this is probably, even though it's not well designed, it's a good database for finding a lot of agents to pitch. So if you you can find a lot of them to pitch here. And once you find the agents and agencies that you want to pitch, you can send them that pitch letter that we went over earlier. So now you're completely equipped. You have the format for the pitch letter, you know how to write it, and now you know where exactly to send it. Now let's talk about when to get a literary agent. If you think you are ready and you think you have a great book, that's a great time. The problem is that I've never met an author who thinks my book is terrible. And let's say most books are not that great. Nobody thinks their book is not that great. So for us as authors, it's really hard to be fully objective. And ultimately, even if we know like our book maybe is kind of good, not great, we don't know if it's ready for an agent. It's really hard to tell. So of course you want to go through the basic steps of getting feedback, not from friends and family. Of course, friends and family, sure, but they're going to give you nice feedback. You need objective, real feedback. So try to seek it out maybe from freelance editors or whoever can take a look at your book that you know can be fair. And the more sources of feedback you get, the better. And it's important that we as creators become self-critical, not to belittle ourselves or to give ourselves low confidence, but in fact to be accurate in our judgments, so that if we see, well, we can be better. If we develop that skill in ourselves, we're going to make a lot of improvements to our work just by ourselves being able to observe it. Because at the end of the day, nobody knows your work as good as you. Nobody spends more time with it. So even the people who can give you feedback, at the end of the day, if you're fair and objective, you can actually tell a lot more on your own. But sometimes that just comes with experience. When I wrote my first book, I thought I was amazing. But now if I look at the same book, I'm like, wow, this really needs a lot of work. But I didn't have that context earlier. I just didn't have that experience. And one thing you don't want to do is just don't get carried away with daydreaming about being a famous author and going on TV shows and talking about your book and doing signings and all this stuff. Those things are good to get you motivated in the short term, but they're really a way to separate from reality. And you actually want to be really tuned into accurately gauging reality. And you want to try to pitch a few agents if you think your book is good. And if you get 0 replies, guess what? It wasn't. Or your book topic might not be a desired topic. If everybody's writing about some topic right now, maybe there's some like really hot popular topic, then maybe there's just too many books like this and the book isn't very marketable because it's entering a too competitive market. For example, if there's like a new diet and you've got the first book on this really cool popular diet, that might be really popular. If you've got the second book on this diet, it might be popular. If you've got the 1000th book on this diet, probably it's not going to be popular. So sometimes being ahead of the curve is interesting too. And if you don't get replies, it's a sign the book wasn't good. Look for ways to improve. Go back to your feedback sources. Go back to just reread your own book on your own, re-edit it on your own, see where the flaws are. And if you don't see it, it means maybe you have to improve as an author. So maybe take some writing coaching, have somebody else look at it with you who's experienced. Because a lot of it is really just turning you into a better writer. And a lot of writers, maybe their 10th book is the one that got published. So we all want things to happen on day one for us, but sometimes just things take their course, you know. We can't really help it. And other benefits or reasons to go through the route of literary agent and the publishing house is if you want to have this authority piece. Because once you say, I'm a published author, not like I'm an Amazon author, because anybody can put their book on Amazon. But if you're like a published author that got published through a publishing house and you're sold in bookstores, then very few people have that. So it's an authority piece. It's a resume piece. Right away, you stand out. And this is something you can use for the rest of your career. You can use it in your byline everywhere, you know. So it really is a strong resume piece, and it's a head turner. Oh, such and such person is a published author. Amazing. Or their books are used in university. Amazing. Or sold in Barnes & Noble. Amazing. So right away, you appear as though you are 3 feet taller. And another reason to have your book published that traditional route through going to a publisher is if you always have really just had that dream of like being a real writer, being in a store. I know being a real writer, you're still a real writer on Amazon, of course. I don't want to belittle that, but some people just have that dream of like getting published the traditional route. It's a real thing for a lot of people. And another practical reason to seek the help of agent and publishing house is if Maybe you've tried selling on Amazon, maybe your other books, or you've tried and you just haven't had success and you need help with marketing. Maybe marketing is not your strong point, writing is your strong point, and marketing is not. Then maybe you want to get the publishing house to help you with the marketing. Or if you think that the book really has that great potential, maybe it's you think it's such a great fit for eventual movie or a play or something. I know that's daydreaming because most are not. But if you do believe that, if you strongly believe that in your heart, then of course, establishing a relationship with your publisher is a great way to explore that possibility. If you're wondering about the consolidation of bookstores across the world, across the United States, well, obviously borders closed, but Barnes & Noble is still open and it's still a publicly traded company. So let's take a look at the financials, not deep financials, because this is not a financial course, but let's take a look at some of the highlights for this company. I'm filming this in 2019 and the latest financial report is from April. I'm filming it in August. What we are interested in is the income statement. You see on the left side here, I'll make this a little bigger so we can take a look at the income statement, and we're specifically interested in the revenue. So this is physical bookstores, just Barnes & Nobles, mostly in the United States, 3.5 billion, that's with a B. That's a lot of books sold. Now, they sell other things, they do things with universities, but at the same time, this is still a huge market that if you're not going through a literary agent and a publisher, you're not tapping into this. And this is the number that we're interested in. Like, how can we take a piece of this 3.5 billion? But this is not really it. This is just Barnes & Noble, which is mainly active in the United States. So we can take a broader look at the financial health of this industry. This is a report for industry statistics. Obviously, you see this article is published in 2019, but the latest data is in 2017. But this industry doesn't move a tremendously large amount. So we can sort of say, hey, whatever it was then, it's probably similar now. A little bit up, a little bit down. Although Barnes & Noble is a profitable company. Now, on the right side, you see bookstore sales revenue in the United States over 10 billion. A number of independent bookstores. This is not publicly traded companies, small bookstores, 2,500. There's a far bigger market beyond the Barnes & Noble market. And this is just US. So in Europe, probably equivalent. And there's a whole rest of the world where your book can also be sold. And again, this is just the paperback book. I mean, there's also magazines, there's also like TV, movie opportunities, theater, there's all kinds of opportunities. But this is the market, and there's a lot of worry about this market, but it seems like there's a plateau in the decline. Sure, because of Amazon, book sales declined, because there's Kindle books and all that. But it's not a decline to the eventual zero. It seems to be plateauing, and the industry has figured out how to move forward. Of course, they're doing different things. They're doing a lot of partnerships with universities. They're doing a lot of creative things. They're maybe, partnering with coffee shops. Who knows what they're doing and which locations, because there's so many different stores. But the takeaway for us is that this is a big market still out there for the taking in this sphere. So you might be wondering, like, how long does this whole thing take from A to Z, and what is it like? So let's exactly go through what to expect from A to Z. First, you write your book, make sure you make it good. Then when it's ready, research and pitch literary agents. It's going to take them like 1 to 30 days to respond, depending on their internal workflow and how many pitches they get. I'd hope it's on the lower end of that, but at the same time, at times it can take as long as 30 days for them to reply, because sometimes they have to get second opinion and it's maybe a little more complex on their end than you think. If there's no agent that replies, keep pitching, and more importantly, keep writing and rewriting and improving your writing craft. If an agent does respond, the next step is you meet. You can meet on Skype, on a phone call. You just have to talk and make sure that you're on the same page about the details of the next steps in the process, and if you work well together. If you guys agree to collaborate with the agent and you're aware there's going to be a 15% fee that they're going to take from all the profit of your book if they get you a deal, You might work together and they might make suggestions for how to improve the book, a little thing here and there. They might coach you through some of the process, explain how things work. And the agent on their end goes off and begins to pitch the book to publishing houses. They usually take on the job if they think that a publishing house might accept the book because the agent has to invest their time and effort. So they have to be extremely accurate about which books that they take on will make them money. So it's not like the time to celebrate yet if they have agreed to work with you, but it's a very positive sign, especially if the agent works for a reputable literary agency. Once they start pitching you, if you get an offer from a publisher, that's the next great thing that might happen. And this can take 1 to 2 to 3 months, sometimes up to 9 months, but at times it can happen quickly because at the same time they are networking and constantly talking to one another. That is, the agents and the publishing houses and all their representatives, that they're in constant contact, and the range of time that you could expect to wait can be a really large range. In few great cases, it can take maybe a week, 2 weeks, if the book is spot on to something they really need. Sometimes it can take a few months. So be patient. And sometimes what might happen is you might need a little bit more editing, improving, so that a publishing house agrees to take on your book. Once they take on your book, they will help you with some editing. They will give you the advance payment. And the books are usually created and mass-produced and distributed in stores. Which stores, how many, that's hard to say. Usually for a small author, for a beginner author, there's a little bit of testing of, they put it in some stores, they see how well it sells. And obviously for the author, one thing you have to do is make sure that you promote the book too. You have to do a lot of the marketing, not sit back, because as a new author, they're not going to invest as much money in marketing of your book as a publishing house might invest in the marketing of a really established author or some celebrity. So you have to do a lot of marketing, do your best to get on some radio shows, talk in wherever you can have a speaking opportunity, any way that is convenient for you to market and promote and sell your book, you have to do that too. So you cannot expect to sit back and just see the sales roll in. The publishing house really expects you to do, they'll help you, but you need to do a lot of the marketing, and your success of the marketing and the success of this book is really strongly tied to your chances of getting published in the future. If you're a new author and your first book didn't do well and you weren't really good at promoting it, and the publishing house lost money with this book, it's unlikely they're going to work with you again. But at the same time, if they succeed and make a profit from your first book, they'll be very happy to look into your second and third book. So your career success as a writer really depends on this first chance that you get with your first published book. So that's essentially the process of how it works. Now let's talk about what is a book publicist. And now these terms might be getting confusing. There's a literary agent, a publisher. Now there's what is this, a publicist? And essentially a publicist is somebody or some company that gets you publicity for your book, which is essentially getting mentioned in some magazines, industry blogs, radio shows, podcasts, television, etc., whatever media possible. And the skill of publicists is to get you into the big shows, whether they're blogs or radio shows, big audiences. The problem with them is that they usually charge $3,000 to $5,000 a month on retainer for 3 to 6 months because their work is not immediate. So it's prohibitively expensive for most authors. And this is something that publishing houses will help you with because they have in-house publicists. But there's also a lot of publicity you can get on your own. So something you can do is sign up for a site like radioguestlist.com, where daily they have podcasters who send out interview requests for certain types of experts, and you can apply to be on their shows. This is for podcasts and radio shows. You can create your own podcast or YouTube show so that as you grow your audience, you'll have a regular audience you can promote to. You can be active on social media and social communities that talk about the topic of your book. So you kind of have built-in audiences, and you can continuously pitch journalists and influencers, and establish relationships with them so that at one point they can promote your book a little bit. So these are all things you can do for free on your own. And later, when you get a deal for your book from a publishing house, they'll connect you with their own in-house publicist. But it is strongly recommended, very strongly recommended, that you try to promote on your own, get your own publicity, because this is a skill that you're going to be using for the rest of your author career. And even beyond your author career, your business career, you have to be able to get your own traffic, your own publicity. So it's a fantastic skill to improve in. So don't just sit back, but I try to actively do these. And of course, most authors want to know, how much money can I make per sale of my paperback or hardcover book sold in a store? And if you are a first-time published author, very likely you'll get a deal that has a low share of the revenue for you, but hopefully you can get a high volume of sales, and you can expect a 10 to 15% revenue that you keep on the sale of every book, because the stores, they might take up to 50%, and don't forget that your publisher takes an additional percentage depending on the kind of deal terms you get. And of course, as a first-time writer, you're almost lucky to get any kind of deal, so you're probably going to get a less good deal. If you succeed in this, your next deal can be better. But for now, this is the expectation, and the idea really is that don't worry about the amount per book, just aim to sell many books. There is a long-standing debate about book editing, and that debate is, should you pay to edit the book, or should the publisher pay to edit the book? Of course, if you're doing self-publishing and you're going through Amazon, you should pay to have the book edited. No question. There's nobody else except you who's responsible for paying for the editing. The issue that comes up is that, of course, once you get signed by a publisher, they should, of course, pay for editing, and they do. And publisher is the one who ultimately has the final edits and most of the edits of the book. It's true. But my take on this is that the book actually has to be good enough to get to the publisher for them to give you a deal. So you have to get past the literary agent, and the book that you pitch to them has to be of some quality. So that implies that you should do some cleaning up and editing for readability, and very importantly, organization of the book. If it's a business book, certainly organization. If it's a creative book, a fiction book, it should read and it should get edited to the point where it does interest the reader, so they can see it for its value. You can't just send the literary agent like a half edited or half-written book and expect them to be some kind of like a mind reader or predictor of the future of where this book will end up. What they'll see is a not so good book, and they're human too, so that they can make errors and they don't always foresee into the future. So you kind of have to help them. So if you believe in the book, you can spend a few $100s on a freelance editor and also actually a copywriter specifically for your pitch letter. You would write the pitch letter, that's the pitch letter for the literary agent. And then you would have a copywriter, like a sales copywriter, edit that pitch letter so that your pitch letter is good. And then you'd have a copy editor to edit your book so that it reads better. All of that is a few $100s on a freelancing site. And it's not something everyone can easily afford, but it's also not prohibitively expensive. And if you really believe in your book, then I believe it's a worthwhile investment for you. If you feel that the book has great potential, I believe it's fine to invest this money. It's not too much, and the quality you get it basically just improves your chances of getting signed by a literary agent. Now I want to show you a case study of a fiction author that is actually a client of Mark Gottlieb's. Mark Gottlieb, of course, is the literary agent, and the author is Kate Moretti. He found Kate Moretti just by browsing other existing bestseller lists on Amazon. So she wasn't a signed author yet, and even though there's a common knowledge in the industry that usually a best fit for a literary agent and a publishing house is a new book. Sometimes if you have a success as a self-published author and do a lot of your own marketing, people can find you through that, people being literary agents, professionals in the field. And because they see that you're succeeding on your own, they want to work with you because they see you can promote your book, you can go the extra mile, and essentially you're proving yourself as a marketer and as a writer, and the book is proving itself. So what happened was Mark ended up working with this person, they got a book deal, and now actually it's not something that is totally publicly open for discussion because it's in the works, but there is a movie deal for this book. So it's not out of the question that like a relatively new author or not a super known author would succeed this way. So this is a real situation where it was a self-published situation and the literary agent found her, got her a deal, and then for Kate's future books and that current book, there was just much more success that way. So the takeaway really is, even if you do self-publish, just make sure that your own marketing is top-notch, because that's the way you're going to get on top of all kinds of bestseller lists, and that's the way people are going to know about your book. So pitching literary agents is not the only way. If you do so much marketing, you'll be very attractive to professionals in the industry, to publishing houses, to literary agents, because they'll see, oh, they can sell. And for them, a lot of it is, yeah, the book has to be good, but the true thing is that like the underbelly of the industry is that you have to sell the book yourself a lot of the times. And by being on the top seller list, you prove that. And that actually is one of the core deciding factors in making you, the author, attractive for them to work with. Now I want to walk you through 2 case studies of my book about which I asked Mark Gottlieb. These books are self-published, and I asked him, hey, so what would a literary agent think when they look at my books? And this particular book, I would say it's been successful. It's used in a few universities around the country. It's given me speaking engagements through this book. It has reasonable sales, and it's got good reviews. So there's a lot of right things about this book. So my question was, okay, like, what do you think? And the first thing he wanted to see is what the prices were and what are the sales are at these prices. Because obviously if this Kindle is $4.99, that is a reasonably okay price. Like that's a reasonable price for a Kindle book. Between $4.99 and $9.99 is where most of them fall. But he was careful that if it's like 99 cents, then those sales don't count as well. So he looked at the price. Then he wanted to kind of look at the details of the book and see where the book was ranking. Hopefully the book is like around below 10,000, near 5,000. That's a good sign for the book. This book fluctuates between 7,000 in the Kindle store and 30,000. I own different seasons and different days and so on and so on. So this book kind of is close, but even so, he was very lukewarm about the potential of this book. And he didn't say like, oh yeah, I would like to sign this. No, he didn't do anything like that. Instead, he's like, well, what is your following like, and things like that. Like in a sense, he was trying to gauge, can we sell this? And obviously my following is, I mean, you could say it's somewhat substantial, right? I've got like 3 million views on YouTube and 30,000 subscribers. I've got like 150,000 Udemy students and so on and so on. And I got like millions of app downloads. And so I have like a big audience. And even so, most of my sales, they come from Amazon for this book. So without Amazon, I wouldn't be able to sell too many copies. And for that reason, Mark wasn't that excited about this particular book. Now, he's just one agent. And even though he does represent all kinds of books, this is not in his wheelhouse. So what I probably should do for this book as a next step is go and find literary agents who represent business books and see what I can do with them. So that's this book. Now, I'll show you another book. This is my productivity book. And by the way, when I show you these books, I'm not trying to sell them. It's just these are the case studies that I know best because they're mine. I know the insider story from A to Z. So this book is a little bit of a beta launch book. It's 20 principles of productivity, but really it's 50. And the other 30 is just for me, when I rewrite the next draft of this book, it's going to be the 50 principles of productivity. And my hope is to create the most comprehensive productivity book that there ever is. That's my hope. So I'm going to create like a really comprehensive book. And then that comprehensive book will be new on the market. And with that comprehensive book that's new on the market, I will probably pitch a number of literary agents to see if I can get this book and the other book into stores. Now, the question will arise, well, am I going to cannibalize my own Amazon sales? Because I'm pretty good at selling on Amazon. Even this book is not selling so great on Amazon, but the business plan book is. So what should I do? Sometimes what you can do is in your agreement with a publishing house, you can say like that the sales are from Amazon, the author keeps, and that's not a part of the contract. And sales from everywhere else, that's a part of the contract. So bookstore sales, anywhere else, publisher gets a cut of that. On Amazon, publisher does not get a cut of that. That is possible to have that in the contract, so it's something that's negotiable. So what I do is probably keep my Amazon sales and do a deal for everything else. And that's maybe the best case, because if you do a deal with everything else, guess what people are going to do? They're going to go to like a bookstore and they're going to be like, well, this book is $19.99 in the bookstore, but look, it's $12.99 on Amazon, because they're going to look how much is it on Amazon very often. Or sometimes they'll just go home and they'll be like, maybe I should have gotten that book. And then they'll just go on Amazon and get that book. So a lot of the stores, if your book is in stores and your book is everywhere, people see it, then it's actually going to help your Amazon because people are going to search for it. So these are the case studies of my books. If you're a new author, here's what I would suggest. Because the publishing world is really slow, go ahead and publish your book, maybe your first book on Amazon, just so that you start understanding how to sell, how to promote, because you will need that skill regardless whether you're self-published or traditionally published. The better you become at that, the more doors open for you. And if you're worried about like, well, will that decrease the chances of me getting signed by a publishing house? Well, yes, it can decrease your chances, but if you're able to promote your book, it can increase your chances, because you'll be showing the publishing houses and literary agents that, hey, I can sell my book on my own. So this can go both ways. But also, you don't have to wait for anyone. You'll be able to make money sooner. And as long as you write your second book, third book, fourth book, which most successful authors, they write multiple books, then those you can have traditionally published if you want, but you want to get into the game sooner rather than later and not have to wait on gatekeepers, because that's the bad part about this industry. And that's the amazing part about Amazon, is that Amazon got rid of these gatekeepers, these like literary agents, publishing houses who, they want you to be a celebrity so that you can sell your book and make $1 for them. But like, it's not about them. You're in business for yourself. And that's why Amazon democratized all this and allowed all of us to let the market decide instead of the gatekeepers decide.
With this video, let's begin a new section of the course in which we're going to talk about how to raise money for your books. Because I know it's really hard to work on your book, write your book. It takes weeks and months sometimes. That's a lot of work before you see any money, because you only see money after you sell the book. And traditionally, in the book world, there was a way to get funding for your book. But that's through getting an agent and getting a book deal through a book publishing house. And the publishing house would give you a book advance, maybe $10,000, $30,000. This is not a gift. This is money you have to pay back from the sales of your book when it's out there. But it is helpful to have that advance for authors, because it takes the stress out of, what am I going to eat this month while I'm writing this book? So it's really, really helpful. It really takes the stress off. The problem is that industry is broken, because before you even write a single word or have your book go live, the book agent that introduces you to the publishing house will take lifetime 15% of all of your book earnings, and the publishing house will do exactly the same. They'll take 15% of your book earnings lifetime. That's broken. that's a bad way to fundraise, especially the book advance is not even a gift. You have to pay it back from your sales. So in this section that's coming up, I'm going to show you 2 different ways to raise money for books. The first way is a more traditional way through Patreon. If you're not familiar with Patreon, it's a website, it's a popular website where creatives and creators can raise money for their creative projects. Obviously, books are creative projects, so it's a great fit. The problem, as you'll see, is that there are high commission fees and other issues related to Patreon. It's great, but not ideal. So I've actually passionately been working on my own book fundraising project, or actually fundraising for all creators, because for the last 20 years, I've been a creator. I'm an author, I'm a poet, I'm a musician, I'm a business owner creating businesses, I create courses, content. It's been my life. And I know how hard it is to create and stress about the future before you make a penny on the thing you create. And for that reason, I created a cryptocurrency project that helps you fundraise creative projects and has a number of advantages over traditional fundraising methods, like not being susceptible to inflation, also not having high transaction fees, and also some cryptocurrency elements that actually give back and make it anti-inflationary, deflationary, so that you preserve and earn more from your money. And I'll explain to you how to raise money in that way so that you have options. And I understand that some people, no matter how logically you explain, or they just are skeptical of cryptocurrency. I totally get it. So if you're skeptical of cryptocurrency, there's no pressure. You can use the traditional fundraising ways, or you can just not fundraise at all and just hope for the best when you write your book, that it sells, and take that risk. It's actually what I did early on. It's commendable. It's brave. There's no shame in it. It's actually better. But it is stressful not to have money early and just not know, am I going to make money? Where's money coming from? So if you would like to help with fundraising in this coming section, I'm going to show you 2 ways, independent ways, so you don't have to rely on that broken industry of getting a book agent, getting a publishing house. That's outdated. But how you can stay independent but still fundraise. So that's what we're going to explore in the coming videos. In this video, I want to introduce you to Patreon, which is a fundraising website specifically for creators to help creators raise money. Traditionally, it's been one of the good options to fund creative projects. And the way you use Patreon is you make an account, you make a fundraising page for your project. Let's say you're creating a book or something like that, and you post your book and you email the link to your project page to all your friends and family, post it on social media and say, hey, I'm fundraising for my book. If you want exclusive extra content behind the scenes or discounts or free book when I actually finish it, donate to me now. And you can do that through Patreon. They take care of payment processing, communication with your audience, and many other things. The problem with them is that when you go to their pricing, you see, you can start for free, as they say. Of course, you can make an account for free, but it's a little deceiving because they charge really, really high fees. When you scroll down, you see they have different plans because after you fundraise, they take a big cut and they have different pricing models. So I actually went to Google and I asked Google to break down their pricing and fees so that it's more clear for us. So when you create a free Patreon account, you can do a lot with it. Grow a community, share content with fans, that's helpful. But if you ever want to get your money out, which is really one of the more important things, and really the reason you're fundraising is to get your money out. You see, to take your money out, they take a percentage of the earnings from creators. So for paid memberships, the platform fee ranges from 5 to 12%. These are gigantic fees. So if you sell things, they take from 5 to 12% on the platform. And to get your money out, they take a 5% fee. So they take fees on top of fees on top of fees. You'll likely fall between a 5% to 12% fee that you have to pay them before you ever see $1 of the money you raised. Not to mention, if you're working with dollars, you should be very well aware that the dollar
has a real inflation rate of approximately additional 5+%. The government reports an approximately 3% average annual inflation rate, but they manipulate how they calculate it, and the real inflation rate is closer to over 5%. I actually made a video on it. This is the video. It's on YouTube. It's very interesting. I used ChatGPT for all the calculations, and the video shows how I use ChatGPT to calculate the real inflation rate versus reported inflation rate, and all the ways that ChatGPT was able to show me how the government manipulates the number that they report to all of us. And I'll have the link to this video so that you understand when you fundraise for your books or creative projects, you lose money to the inflation of the dollar, and you lose money to very high commission fees. And on top of these fees, for extra processing, you might have PayPal fees, etc. You might lose over 10% to inflation and payment fees from the get-go. And while it's still nice to retain some of the money you raised, your goal wasn't to lose money. Your goal was to raise money and make that money go as far as possible for you. So in the next video, I'm going to show you a project that I made because I'm a creator, and I've been a creator for art projects, music, businesses that I've started for the last 20 years. So it's a project for creators by creators that I'm working on to help creators like you and I get funding by taking advantage of cryptocurrency, because cryptocurrency is deflationary. I'll explain how that works in the next video, and many of the other benefits of cryptocurrency. Now, if you hate cryptocurrency, and many people are incredibly skeptical of it, especially creative people in the art world, they tend to be very skeptical of cryptocurrency. If you are incredibly skeptical of cryptocurrency and you feel like you hate it, then Patreon and the dollar is actually the best route. You don't necessarily have to use Patreon. You can use something like GoFundMe, which has lower fees, but it still has some fees, and you're still subject to losing money to inflation, because if inflation is 5%, imagine you're holding dollars this year, next year. Well, the value of all your money is just going down the drain. So no matter what, you have to become savvy at protecting the value that you worked so hard to earn, and usually that's by holding some kind of assets rather than cash. The assets can be stocks, it can be cryptocurrency, it can be other asset classes. They're advantageous because they are purchased with dollars. And as the value of the dollar goes down, it takes more dollars to buy the same thing, the same asset, meaning that the price of the asset goes up because it's measured in dollars. That's why assets appreciate and dollars depreciate. You want to hold assets. That's just a tiny bit of a tutorial for how to protect the money you worked so hard to earn. And in the next video, I'm going to introduce you to the cryptocurrency project I'm working on to specifically help creators raise money, preserve their money, and actually grow their funds to fully fund their creative projects. So I'll show you that in the next video. In this video, I'm going to introduce you to my cryptocurrency project, which is sprktoken.com, as in Spark Token, as in Spark Your Creative Project. As you can see here, the headline says the first cryptocurrency designed to fund creative projects like music, books, art projects, startup ideas, online projects, and more. When you click on Start Here, it basically explains to you what I've already been explaining. Cryptocurrency is an asset that helps you not lose money to inflation. I quickly go over what the reported inflation rate is, what the real inflation rate is, how much your money deteriorates, like $1 retains only the value of 0.36 cents over a number of years. Then I discuss not losing money to processing fees, etc. And I discuss investment benefits of this token because it's deflationary. You can actually earn more of it as an investor. Investors can get airdrops. Think of airdrops roughly like stock dividends. And investors can get additional rewards through something like staking, which is a way to have your cryptocurrency earn passive income for you. But the main benefit is that you can post projects to get fundraised. For example, at the moment of filming this project is very new and I'm collecting a few pilot projects. So I'll show you one such project. It's actually my project, this one, poetry book with songs. For people who want to support it, they can click on support, and on this page, this is the fundraising page, anybody can create a fundraising page on this website for their project, and then they can share this page and provide the cryptocurrency public address where people can donate. It's that easy. And to sign up here, you can actually navigate from start here. At the very bottom, there's a call to action to submit your project. There's a tutorial for how to set up your cryptocurrency token. You enter your token address. I'm just going to give an example. Then you click continue. Then you fill out details about your token. After you click continue, it's going to show you your information. Obviously, you want to fill this out in an interesting way so that people want to donate to your project. You can also explain the benefits of donating, like people get freebies or discounts. And then you'll be able to post the project. After you post your project, you'll have a project page just like this one, where obviously you can get promotion for your project right from this website and by other means. For example, I'll be doing my own promotion of projects that are fundraising through this site. So you'll get promotion for your projects, but likely more importantly for you, you'll be able to raise money through this cryptocurrency. And there's also a video here with a tutorial for how people can actually buy the Spark token and send it to you. So if you create such a project, like go to project, post your project, within the very same day, you'll be able to start fundraising and getting the word out about your project so that you can fund your project and stress less about your finances and just gain more support, because so many creative people really need that support. I myself have been creative in so many fields, and I understand the financial stress, the risk we all take, because I've been there. And that's why I created this project, because I understand how incredibly helpful financial support can be. And of course, the great thing is that when you fundraise through this project, you don't get hit by the fees. It's free to post here. It's free to take your money out of here. I'm not a middleman. I don't collect any commission. The only commissions are tiny, tiny, tiny commissions for the cryptocurrency transactions, but they are fractions of a percent, and you earn much more than that right back with the other bonuses you get by being an investor in this token. So if you're starting any kind of business, if you're already working on any kind of a creative project, a book, anything else, I encourage and welcome you to post your project on this site and get involved, and I'll do whatever I can and whatever is in my power to, number one, help you with promotion, and number two, also help you with the fundraising. And of course, if you have any questions, I'm also there as tech support. As a student in this course, feel more than welcome to email me. And if you have any questions, I'll be more than happy to help you. And of course, there's no pressure to sign up for this. This is just one of the options, which hopefully now you see that I sincerely have the best intentions in mind for creators. I'm trying to save people from inflation, transaction fees, and I created the tokenomics of this token to be deflationary so that you earn more of it as time goes on as an investor. I allocated a pool of tokens to send to investors via airdrops and other ways. And of course, hopefully the token itself appreciates, which is something that I'm working on very hard, so that your hard-earned and hard fundraised money goes a long way towards helping you with your projects.